Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. And any of you regular viewers out there, especially of my Twitch stream, will know that I notoriously play better when I'm on low hit points. It's almost as if, you have to take the first 2 hits to realize that you don't have infinite hit points and then start to play seriously when you've got them. Now, look, that sounds like one of the biggest excuses ever. What do you mean start to play seriously when you realize you haven't got them? It's more about that you kind of like rein in the risks that you're willing to take. And when you've got the hit points, it's very easy to think like, I could go on forever. I can take a risk against this player, hope they miss me, hope that I pen them, and see how far you can push your luck. There is like a happy middle ground with regards to risk-taking inside World of Tanks. I see a lot of players, especially frustratingly towards the last part of the battle, who have all of their hit points left, while all of their team are melting around them, and then they end up with full hit points against kind of like a 1 versus 6 or a 1 versus 7 with almost no hope to be able to handle it. And then you have the players who just think as if everything is going to go right for them all the time, and they'll rush in, and then suddenly, they're either back in the garage in record time, speedrunning the game of World of Tanks, or alternatively, they've taken so much damage that now that they haven't saved the hit points for later on in the battle, where you can make more effective trades. Now, that is definitely a reality that if you can save your hit points for later on in the battle, there will be more tanks that will be a 1-shot, there will be more tanks that will be a 2-shot, and if you can go in and take one to take a gun out the game, quite often you can make pressure that otherwise you couldn't have earlier on in the battle. Especially if you're the kind of player who often gets the drop on your opponents. Think about it like this: if you've got the same rate of fire and you go in and you get the first shot, they're going to hit you before you reload your second. However, if they're not a vehicle that you can remove from the game in 2 shots, then you're kind of trading evenly after the initial impact, which is why kind of that initial shot in World of Tanks, or even engaging tanks that are on fairly low hit points, which you can remove before they get more than 1 shot at you, can make all of the difference with not only your damage output, but also with regards to taking big swings in the battle. And talk about taking damage, goodness gracious, I wanted to punish that TVP that was up on the hill, and in return I took 3 shots. I got hit by both TVPs and I got hit by Pat in the tank, and doing 400 damage for losing 1,000 hit points, I don't think you're going to win many games or get many ace tankers or even many marks of excellence if you play like that. So let's talk a little bit about the vehicle that I'm playing today. This is a Progetto 66. It's a tier 9 Italian auto-reloading heavy tank, as you can see in the middle of your screen. And I think this vehicle is very underrated. I think it's an absolute beast of a tank, and I think that arguably it's more powerful tier for tier than the Rinoceronte. Why? Because it has 9 degrees of gun depression, so it can work a ridgeline very well. The 120mm on this tank does have access to a wide variety of awesome ammunition as well. Maybe not the gun handling though. With the AP rounds with 242, decent shell velocity, the gold rounds on this tank have 303mm of pen at tier 9, which is lovely, and the Hesh rounds on this tank even have 120 mils of pen, and they also have 515 alpha, so they can be very effective as well. So let's pause for a second here before we shot that SU and take a look at the situation. The situation is that I'd done less than 800 damage, and I'm down to a 1-shot. 332. I guess I could take a hit from a TVP some of the time, depending on what kind of a gun they're using, but really now 80% of the enemy team are going to be shutting me down in a single shot. And just let's see how far I can push the final remaining 1-shot in World of Tanks today. As I said at the start of the video, Twitch calls them like the QB hit points at the end of the game. And when I know that I'm a 1-shot, suddenly I'm thinking that every vehicle is my imminent destruction. You'll see that I'm always thinking now about making sure that I'm as low as I can possibly be, only exposing myself to 1 possible tank. I have to be thinking about where all of the different vehicles are. It's almost as if we've taken a slap and woken up and realized, oh, okay, time to get serious now. Now, quite often when this happens, I'll be later on in the battle, and then I'll kick myself saying, oh, if only I hadn't lost those hit points earlier on, I would have them to be able to spend now. And whether that's going to be the case in today's video, you're just going to have to wait and see. But let's see what we can do with 332 hit points in this game of World of Tanks. We've already managed to do like 1,200 damage, getting 3 free shots in. And it's really just awareness in this kind of situation, something that I don't think we had for the early part in the battle. However, we still have to take our risks. If you have an opportunity to pop up and go hold down against a tank, you still have to take the risks. Just because you're a one-shot means that you can't dial in your range to ultra safe. You still have to try and make shots. You still have to take your chances, for sure. However, the risks that you are willing to take are no longer possible. So just try and adapt that range depending on your hit points. And try to find this kind of sweet spot when you play World of Tanks, where you're not risking everything early on in the battle, but also that you're still willing to commit. I'm not sure how a lot of you feel about the matchmaker and the length of games as time goes on in World of Tanks, but the games are undoubtedly getting faster and faster and faster. And that means that unless you're willing to commit early and make an impact before your team have managed to get overwhelmed, I'm thinking that all of you out there are very good players and that you want to try and influence the battles, then it's not enough to play defensively. You have to be willing to try and commit to take the early positions. You have to be willing to try and pressure your opponents early. Taking kind of a mid position if you're in a heavy tank or in a kind of like an assault medium is not going to be the way for you to have an optimal win rate. But on the other hand, you know, me going and losing all of my hit points at the start of the battle is also not going to be the way to have an optimal win rate. So try and find this happy middle ground for yourself, because there is a sweet spot in World of Tanks, and quite often a lot of us are on a quest to be able to find it. So we're now up to 2,800 damage, so we've done 2,000 damage without receiving a hit, and also 500 assistance as well. And you can see just how lovely this vehicle is. It doesn't have the best gun handling, but vert stabs definitely makes it playable. And with 2.7 seconds aim time, it's not too bad. We have a look at the Conway, see that the Conway is not going to poke up for us. And we're just making sure we're only firing on reload here. Because when you're a one-shot on a tank like this, the last thing that you want is for your opponents to all-in you, especially if they've got enough hit points to be able to take you down. But by saving these 3 shells, it means that we're always ready to go. You can see that I nearly fell into the trap, right? It looked like, oh, I get to shoot a tier 10 heavy tank in the side? But then I realized, oh, yeah, okay, that sneaky FE405 is above me still. And those are the pitfalls. Look, if I'd been more sleepy in this game, I would have fallen into it, and I would be out the battle. In this game, it would have been undoubtedly lost. For us to lose another tank there, to lose a positional play, and to be down 3,000, it would have been more like 4,000 hit points if I'd taken the hit there. That might be something that my team can't manage to come back into. And what you're going to see here today is one of those kind of games where it's right on the cusp of whether something is winnable or not. And those are the most exciting games to be a part of. And the fact that I put myself down to that one shot earlier on in the battle just kind of like compounds the impact. Well, it compounds the range of how close this battle was. Alright, so the FE405 is reloading. So I'm going to poke up, and while I'm taking a little bit of a risk here, I feel like I also have to try and commit. And we do manage to just get our shell over that ridge line, giving ourselves as little as possible. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm actually going to show you quite an interesting tactic. Look how I've pressed my heat key once, and you'll say, QB, you fired early, you fired early. But actually what I did is by pressing my 2 key once, and then firing just before I managed to reload, what it allows me to do is to switch to heat rounds while using the shell compensation mechanic of the Italian auto reloaders. So while I was lucky there that the FE405 didn't manage to go through my tank because they hit my mantlet, I thought it was worth it to try and keep the DPM going because we're under so much pressure right now. We're down 2,000 hit points. The 257 could push me. The Emil could push me. The Minotaur could get around me. The Emil might, the ELC might be trying to flank me, but luckily we see the ELCs up north. So you can do that. You can fire early when you're loading one ammunition type and then get a quick reload of another ammunition type if you just press the key once and then fire. And so I intentionally fired early to be able to switch from my 2 remaining AP shells, which we can't put a third in if we've only got 2. And now I've got a full mag of heat loaded in an optimal time. So the FE405 spotted, the Gorilla gets a good shot in, we light up that FE405, and suddenly this game is maybe looking like it's a chance. We're still down on hit points, but we're actually up on tanks now. I'm worried about where the 257 is. I'm also worried about the Emil. The Emil, a very flexible vehicle. So I'm going to continue to just keep poking. And there's the Emil right on my side. We're going to take a shot, maybe at that turret, see if we can go through. We do! The heat rounds there, able to bludgeon their way through, albeit the thick Swedish armor. And now the 257 has appeared. All of my team are also very low on HP. You can see that I ping the map to suggest to the Gorilla that maybe they want to leave the hill and try and flank round to help me with the 257. But to be fair, the Gorilla's in a pretty nice opportunistic place up on the hill. And the FE405 manages to shut down the Emil. But unfortunately, the 257 shuts down the FE405. But I'm going to make their sacrifice count. And wow, you got to love the outlines here, allowing me to see exactly how I can shoot through the gap. And I decide to fire 3. Now remember, that's going to make my reload tragic. The reload goes from 13 to 14 to 16, showing you that with this vehicle, it's the first and the second shell that are kind of optimal reloads. We give a big thumbs up to the Gorilla there, but the third shell is kind of an emergency shell on this vehicle. But also remember that if you are firing the second shell, you've had to wait for a 3.5 second intra-clip reload. So even though you're only losing a second off the reload, you had to wait for 3.5 seconds of possible reloading of that first shell. And so, ladies and gents, boys and girls, from the 800 damage that we dealt, having lost 1,600 hit points in this battle, we are now up to 6,800 with 1,200 assistance. It's just been rock solid plays, with a bit of luck as well from the FE405 bouncing that HE shell. But we've done 6,000 damage extra. This is over 7,000 combined while we have been a one-shot in this battle. Maybe I should try and play like this all the time. But that, again, that would not be optimal. Because you have to be willing to take risks. And if I didn't get unlucky with taking that 1,000 bunch of damage early on in the battle, then maybe it would have worked out. So you can see in the I'm coming up with a tactic in the game here to say, WZ, can you please cap to force him out? Because this is a Minotauro. It's the best tank destroyer in the game, and they're on 1,700 hit points against a tier 8 that could be a one-shot if they high roll. A Gorilla who is a one-shot pretty much 50% of the time, and myself who is a guaranteed one-shot. And with the Minotauro holding on for dear life with 2 minutes left on the battle, they've literally got their back up against the red line here. But thank goodness for the WZ on our team called Attack Savlad, who is now going to take all the pressure off us. So all we have to do is just hold. But of course, if the Minotauro comes forwards, I'm going to still whittle them down. Looks like they actually low roll against the Borask there. It's going to give me time to get 2 shots in. The Gorilla misses. The sirens go off. We're now up to 7,600 damage with 1,200 assistance. And you can see that even the WZ looks like he's trying to fire in from the cap circle there. That's a little bit of a risk, but you know, I'd probably do the same thing. It'd be quite an impressive blind fire if the Minotauro hit them from there. So I don't want to be greedy at the end of the battle, but I'm going to be greedy and I actually absorb a heat round. But that's going to mean that we've got some extra time to be able to put a shot through the side of the turret and finish off with nearly 8,000 damage dealt. That is over 7,000 damage dealt on a one-shot and 1,200 assistance. Look, I'm going to pretend like, oh, this is just QB hit points all the time. No, look. This was definitely an exceptional game. We played ridiculously tight in a strong control tank. This is the secret to your Italian auto reloaders, is knowing about the reloads, knowing about keeping the pressure on your opponents while also still keeping that mag in place. And if you can keep that mag in place, you prevent them from being able to all-in you as a play. And if you can prevent your opponents to be able to all-in you while still using the decent but not impenetrable turret armor that this vehicle has, then you will be able to dictate the combat. And if you can dictate the combat and you know a thing or two about World of Tanks, there's hardly any sweeter experience. So high caliber here for that 8,000 damage, of which 7k was done on a one-shot. A Confederate here for dealing damage to 6 different tanks that were subsequently killed by our allies, as well as the 4 kills. That's where you know you've had a big game of World of Tanks. 1,759 base experience, and we even made a healthy profit as we penned all of those AP shells before we had to dip into the HE. So, the Progetto 66, I think it's a very underrated vehicle. Get yourself one of these, use the 120mm, unless you're a free-to-play player and you're never willing to fire gold, then you might do better with the 105. Become the control freak of World of Tanks and see how far you can make those hit points work. But the real takeaway that I wanted from this video today is to look at where you are on the spectrum of, should we say, spending hit points. Do you think you're too defensive and you're alive at the end of the battle with more hit points than you need and your opponents are just farming you because you've let your allies pass away? Or you're on the other side where you're too aggressive, you're going in and you're dying far too early in the game. There's got to be a sweet spot somewhere around there. I think I'm probably on the more aggressive side of the sweet spot spectrum, which is probably something that I should recognize and adapt into my game, but it's tricky after 100,000 battles of wanting to YOLO. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And if you're watching this video as it goes live on Friday, I'm going to be going live all day on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby with brand new drop tokens so you can get yourself a tier 6 premium tank or some of the epic styles starting at 2 o'clock UK time today. And also, just a heads up, as a thank you to the QuickyBaby community for so many of you using my bonus code from November last year and coming back to the game, Wargaming are giving me special drops tomorrow on Saturday where you can, if you missed it, get one of the QB 2D stars. So really looking forward to seeing you this weekend on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic and hopefully I'll see you soon.